OCO, I'm Mary Baker Shaw, the new at-large representative for the Cherokee Nation. It's been an exciting first month in office, and I understand there's a lot of work to be done. I come from a proud family that has been involved with education for generations, and I've dedicated the last 35 years of my life supporting health and educational causes. I have fought to provide opportunities for all college students to access scholarships, resources, and opportunities through traveling workshops and seminars like the one you're going to participate in today. It is with great pleasure that I welcome you to part one of the virtual scholarship workshop hosted by the Cherokee Pens Project and Dr. Julia Coates. This presentation is void of political views. It is here solely to help you achieve your dreams at college. Your speaker today will be former Tribal Council member, Dr. Cara Cowan Watts. Dr. Watts has helped thousands of Native American students achieve their career dreams, and I look forward to this workshop and others presented by the Cherokee Pens Project. I hope you can join me in the future for my webcast updating our at-large citizens on issues that face our great nation. I also hope you will follow me on Facebook at Mary Baker Shaw, where you can get information on Medical Mondays and Scholarship Saturdays. I look forward to our future.
Good afternoon. I'm Kimberlie Gilliland, and I will be your moderator today. I would like to thank at-large Tribal Council member Mary Baker Shaw for her support and Star University for allowing us to use their facilities. At this time, I would like to request that you turn off all of your microphones and ask questions via the chat function that you will find at the bottom of the screen. We will have a question and answer session at the end of the presentation. Our guest presenter is Cara Cowan Watts. Dr. Watts has earned her PhD in Biosystems Engineering from Oklahoma State University and is currently the CEO of Tulsa Pier Drilling. She served 8 years as Cherokee Nation Tribal Council member and as the Eastern Oklahoma Area Vice President for the National Congress of American Indians. Welcome, Cara Cowan Watts.
And during that path of funding all of my school education, all 3 degrees, I received $0 from the Cherokee Nation, and all my degrees were paid for via scholarships. I was not PELL eligible. So I think we've gotten feedback from many of you that you're frustrated because you don't know how you're going to pay for school. You're not inside the Cherokee Nation. You feel like the only option you have is the Cherokee Nation. And then if you're higher income, you feel like you may not qualify for scholarships. And I don't find that any of those things are true. And I'm a living example of being able to pay for 3 engineering degrees with no student loans taken out. I even had money to live on. And I did that through scholarships. So it requires focus and work and an investment in yourself. And I'm going to help try to lay out that process. So how do you go about finding scholarship dollars? Well, there are some things you can specifically do to start your search and start building your list. And to do that, it would be things like on the bottom where you would just do a Google search or fastweb.com. And there is a list later in the packet. It's kind of in the middle of the package, which is the PDF that you should have received when you signed up for the scholarship workshop, which is what I actually take out in to my scholarship presentations and go over in detail. At the top, it's labeled Web Resources for Students. And it just gives a brief 1-page list of possibilities for one-time searches or targeted searches that you would do over time, but they're not ongoing. Now, FastWeb's ongoing because you set up a profile and you tell them all about yourself, and then you're going to give them an email address. Then that will, based on the profile you set up, and I think it's anywhere from an investment of 30 minutes to an hour to set up your profile, and FastWeb's one of the original websites to do this. Then it will regularly, routinely, as if there's a scholarship uploaded or there comes a due date, it will email you that there's a match for a scholarship. So some of the ongoing things that are specific to us as Indian people, and especially STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, is ACES. and that's the American Indian Science and Engineering Society. So if you're not familiar with ACES, you would go to aces.org or AISES.org. And if you are familiar with ACES and you're going to go at the national conference, I would love to meet you. I'll be there next week and attending the entire conference, and specifically the career fair, which is where I try to help and mentor students one-on-one through those processes. But organizations like ACES have scholarship dollars associated with them for their paid members. And that's where it's important that you have a paid membership and you engage with groups that further what you want to do for a career, which starts with your choices for school, and then they will invest in you because you're a match. So ACES is about science, technology, engineering, mathematics, for example. So they're going to fund people who want degrees in STEM. Then I maintain the Oklahoma Professional Chapter of ACES email listserv, where I personally still volunteer my time and have since 2003 in pushing out scholarship opportunities, fellowships, internships, full-time jobs to that email list. And that is actually hosted through Oklahoma State University's email listserv technology, but I'm the moderator and I invest the time as a volunteer to push those things out. So there's ongoing opportunities there. You would have to email me and ask to be added to the OPC ACES listserv. Then the Cherokee Nation News and Events email listserv. So during my process, there were some interviews that I had for either gaining entrance to prestigious schools, or actually getting bigger scholarships. And coming out of high school, growing up in Seminole, Oklahoma, I did not have the relationship that I do now with the Cherokee Nation because I wasn't spending every day in the Cherokee Nation. There weren't community groups like the Rogers County Cherokee Association, Cherokee Pins, the Tulsa Cherokee Community Organization, and the other groups exist both at large and inside the Cherokee Nation. And we didn't go to stomp dance. So what happens is you need to have some kind of context with the Cherokee Nation other than a blue card. Otherwise, if you do not look identifiable or like a movie Indian for folks, you could be denied access to universities such as Harvard, MIT, because they have some idea, and when you go to interview, it could be a problem. Also in Indian country, Cherokees in particular, because of all the wannabes, have a different perspective. So if you have a Navajo, for example, and I'm going to pick on them because I love them, the Navajo Nation has a much different context culturally than we do. So if they see a Cherokee card, they may only see you as something they've got in their head, an idea. So you need to be able to talk about your community in a way that makes other Indian people comfortable that you are a Cherokee Nation citizen that's engaged in more than a blue card, so that they feel like their investment in you is worth every penny if they're the deciding factor on something like the Gates Scholarship, or even the new Department of Energy, I think it is, or Department of Interior, where there's money set aside under the Colbell lawsuit. Also, we have the local Cherokee community organizations. They are giving scholarships, and a lot of times, from what I understand, they may not even have applicants because people won't make the time to fill out a scholarship application or an essay. Then also you want to engage with groups such as Cherokee Pins, who will have ongoing information, or as Mary Baker Shaw, your at-large councilwoman, indicated on Saturdays, she's going to be pushing out on her Facebook page or website, or both. She's going to be pushing out regular information on Saturday about scholarship opportunities for her investment. So you need to look for places where you can regularly search or do a more intensive search, something like fastweb.com. Even don't forget Google. Do not forget your scholarship or finance folks at your university of choice, and talk to everybody. So there is also one more place that's not on the slide. Do not forget to network, period. So there's a lot of local scholarships around like Rotary or Lions Club and other stuff. So if you're not engaged in the community and they don't know who you are, you're more than likely not going to get those monies. But there are pockets of money everywhere. And I fought for $50, which is why my education was paid for and I had no student loans. So again, if you refer to the PDF package, there is a starting list for you to go to kind of give you an idea about just a small portion of the number of places you can go for sources on finding the scholarship applications, which is where you start to find the money. And by the way, I do this presentation because I want you to find the money. I don't want you to not go to school because you can't find the money. I don't want you to not go to school because you're afraid of the student loan debt. Again, I was not Pell eligible. Both my parents were teachers in the state of Oklahoma, which meant we didn't have enough to do anything of help for college. But they made enough money that I was not Pell eligible. And I was able to focus on my path on scholarship applications and pay for everything without student loans. So you'll see some of these parts of this presentation are fleshed out more in the PDF file. And again, this is the scholarship workshop packet that should have been emailed to you when you signed up. So if you're a parent of a 4th through 8th grader, or you're a 4th through 8th grader that's on today, the foundation for money, and this applies to everyone, but if people are wondering how they can start early to get ahead of the process to really bring in the big bucks. And when I say big bucks, there's millions of dollars of scholarships that still go unfunded every year because people just did not apply. And that's sad to me when I hear folks, I'll be frank, complain that they couldn't go to school because they couldn't find the money, or they have student loans that they can't pay off later. Well, more often than not, when I start visiting with them, they never made the effort to go through the process that I share today. So 4th through 8th grade, you want to focus on resume building. You'll join organizations such as Cherokee PENS, the Tulsa Cherokee Community Organization, Rogers County Cherokee Association, whatever those things are that tie you to either what you want to be when you grow up, such as an engineer like myself, or your Cherokee identity as a Cherokee Nation citizen and cultural community. You want to volunteer in those organizations. If church is your center of your home life or personal life, then you want to volunteer formally and through the church and start building a resume. The other thing is you need to build networks. So you need to understand what the network is you will need to get the money you want for the college of your choice and or the career path, which starts with the degree you pick, and build networks around that and start creating relationships, which will then feed your resume. You need to start practicing. And by the way, there is an example resume for high school students, which is about, I think, page 5, I think. And it starts with Keith Jones, which is an example generic resume to give an idea of maybe what things look like and how you start quantifying what goes on your resume, quantifying and qualifying. The next is you're going to practice positive habits. So you'll see at the bottom of the second page in the PDF handout, the communication in the age of social media. At the very bottom, you're going to see thank you notes. So I cannot stress enough how important thank you notes are. They will make or break the difference between you getting opportunities after the fact, where money's become available and no one knows it. But you were the only one to write a thank you note, so that organization steps up and funds you, even when you thought there was no money. Or the idea that the people who do your recommendations or get you your, even the secretaries who are providing you with maybe your high school transcript for all these scholarship applications you're going to submit, you need to make sure and thank these people or the folks writing your recommendation letters. So it's really important, families, students, parents, grandparents, at 4th through 8th grade, you start building this foundation of good habits. Also, just follow up. Let's see, it is then 3 pages later, there's a page titled recommendation letters. So this is about follow-up and being organized. And you can start seeing in that detailed document how to do that. Then you have social media best practices. Remember, parents, grandparents, students, I cannot stress enough, you will lose opportunities if you do not have good social media practices. And that includes the friends you keep, the company you keep. We've seen the headlines where I think 11 students at Harvard lost their opportunity to be at Harvard and lost scholarship dollars and everything else because of things that happen on social media. There's many examples of Division I and Division II athletes losing their opportunity to proceed with a team because of what they wrote on social media or what they shared or maybe even just received. So there is a detailed, back to the second page, communication in the age of social media. I try to detail some of those items out and give you just a quick look in one sheet to help guide your student, or if you're a student that doesn't have necessarily the support network, a place to start. I know that Cherokee Pins, I believe, will be doing further webinars just focused on some of these pages and like social media best practices, maybe next. And that's going to be more in-depth, just focused on social media because it's so in-depth. I cannot stress enough communication skills. I think there's a perception because we are so connected today in 2017 with social media, phones, cell phones, that people can communicate inherently. And that is wrong. So if your student, and there is, back on the communication, the age of social media, they need to know how to answer the phone, how to set up their voicemail professionally, the appropriate texting and when to use texting, also how to structure a professional email, as well as do personal hands-on interviews. They will have to answer the phone and talk to someone in order to get the bigger money. And I want you to take home the money. That's what this is about. So I hope that gives you a snapshot. If you're already past 4th through 8th grade, these things all still apply. But if you're wondering how to guide your younger brothers or sisters or nephews and nieces or people in your family or yourself, this is what you have to focus on starting at this age. So we get then 9th through 12th grade in high school and getting the money. Now, and basically almost all of these things apply even if you're a college student or you're a graduate student, but there is some things such as grades that may or may not count the same way. So I think parents don't understand because guidance counselors are so busy doing disciplinary action and not really guiding people around careers or counseling them in education, that they don't understand that grades count on their transcript 9th through 12th grade. And sometimes 8th grade grades also count if they're picking up algebra or other STEM items earlier in their curriculum. So those good habits are built 4th through 8th grade, and they really start counting because they hit your high school transcript, which will be used to make or break the bigger money scholarships. So make sure the grades count 9th through 12th grade. Then you have your national tests. You have ACT, SAT, the PSAT. You need to make sure that your students are focused on these tests to some degree, that they're practicing and they practice some more and they're comfortable test taking. Because these national tests also immediately qualify them for the bigger dollars in scholarships. So they are to be taken seriously. I kind of have a problem with Oklahoma Friday Night Lights because it doesn't set our students up. Our focus in Oklahoma tends to be football and not these things that actually give a lifelong money and make sure that they have careers at the end of the day. So if they're doing other things and we're pushing them towards football or whatever that is, and they're not focused on making sure they're a student, then they're already losing out on money in school, and they don't want to be an adult starting out with large student loans. Make sure 9th through 12th grade that their email habits are good. There's nothing wrong with checking and double checking and kind of being a mentor on this and looking. So you can see after the communication age of social media, back to the PDF handout, there is an example of a poorly written email that I've done for you, such as all caps, no punctuation, all sorts of things. It doesn't have any identifiers. But if you'll go to the next Gmail email, I provide an example of a more professionally formatted email that you would actually use. Someone receives it, they have all the information they need in the right place. Don't bother try calling this poor woman who has my old tribal cell phone, by the way. I do not have it any longer. And for some reason she answers, or has kept the phone number. I don't know why. So you won't be able to reach me there, but you can reach me still at Cara@caracowan.com or caracowanwatts@gmail.com. But there's a big difference between the first email I showed you, which is poorly written, and this professionally formatted email example. And those are some of the habits that we need in place for our students to get the bigger dollars. Plus, it helps with getting jobs later, getting promotions, getting the big bucks, even later in your career. So then 9th through 12th grade, you want to do a recommendation inventory. Following the email examples, there's one at the top that's titled recommendation letters. So this is the point, and it's stated in the details I provide in the handout, that you want to understand, do you have the network in place to even give you the recommendations you need for the upcoming scholarship application process? And if not, you need to build that inventory, so to speak, of professionals that are not related to you that can give you a strong recommendation letter when you need it. And there's a number of things I outline about how you're respectful to those people and the information you need up front when you ask them for it. But this is that time when you do that inventory of whether or not you have the network you need to do recommendations. Also, this is the time when you do a resume inventory. Going back to the example resume, do you have enough information to actually build the resume that looks similar to what is formatted in one page? And it needs to be one page, by the way. Have you finalized it, put it in writing, and do you have a regular routine to update that resume as you go through and add awards, add skill sets, add experiences, whatever that is? Because the resume is key to actually doing the application, because it will save you tons of time, because you'll simply be able to attach and upload that resume and you're already done. It'll help expedite. You'll be able to apply for more scholarships and do so quickly. Also, you need advanced interview skills. Back on the communication in the age of social media, I recommend you Google and practice behavioral interviewing. It's an actual term, or the STAR method, which is situation or task, action, result, or outcome. And the reason I'm talking about this is because it's become very apparent to me that when I work and mentor, especially millennials and folks just younger than probably 28 or 30 years old at this point, they have a really hard time in general talking to people in a personal setting one-on-one. So we need to make sure that people are comfortable being in person with another human being and sit across from them, make eye contact, and know how to answer questions and form sentences that aren't text emojis and those kind of things. I mean, it's just a reality now. So there's a lot of details in the handouts. I'm really going at a high level here because I want to make sure that I leave you plenty of time to get to questions here in a little bit. So when you're applying for the money, as you go through the handouts, you'll see a section that says, or a sheet that says tips to applying for scholarships. So you want to determine what they want, meaning have you looked at the scholarship application and actually made a list. My favorite is those big Post-it notes. I don't know if anybody else has an office supply addiction, but I like those really big color lined Post-it notes. And if it was me, I would have those, and I would take those now and I would put them on the front of the application and really understand what they need, what they want. So I referred back earlier about thank you notes to your high school secretary or whoever's responsible for giving you the certified transcript. How many do they need? What format do they need it in? What's the deadline? Make a short list of everything you're going to need that may have a lead time so that you can have that in your own words, easy to find, and take a moment when you find these applications to figure out if it's something that's a match. Are you a match for it? What do they need in it? Then you're just going to give them what they want on the application. You have to actually follow the instructions. It's funny because I'm going to give instructions during this presentation, and I will still have folks that do not follow up and cannot follow basic instructions. And that will cost you money in the scholarship application. There's only one thing that I'm going to talk about here in a moment where you don't exactly follow the instructions to still get the money. So, one of the things I want to stop and, well, we'll wait. We'll hold that off. So you want to give them what they want, actually follow the instructions, have a plan, and then you need to add something special to make you distinct. So if you feel like you're going to apply and there's going to be all these people that are qualified and you all on paper look the same, then you need to make sure in your essay or somewhere in a cover letter, somewhere on the application, if at all possible, that you tell them why you need this scholarship more than anyone else that's qualified for it. This is not the time to be shy. I know that we are taught not to boast in our community, but you cannot, if you do not tell them your story, you will go in the no pile. And that's not where I want you, because that means you're not getting the money. And there's a whole list of things that when you go through the packet, you'll see, and you may have questions later. And I'll work with Kimberlie Gilliland, Cherokee Pens, Dr. Julie Coates, and whoever needs to be involved to try to get those answered in an organized fashion. But as you're determining what they want, you're also creating a deadline management calendar. Back when I did this, it was literally on a floppy disk, and you were lucky to save like a paragraph at a time. You're, as students, very fortunate now. There's cut and paste. You've got the ability to crank out scholarship applications in breakneck speed compared to what I had. I had to actually write off for the scholarships by physical mail, U.S. Postal Service, and then wait for the application in paper to return, and then possibly type it out on a regular old typewriter. So now most things are online and you can do that. But regardless, whether it was that time period when I did it or today, you need a deadline management calendar. And one of the things I would use, you could use just the cheap calendars you get from your insurance place or your nonprofits. You could create a Google calendar and do it. You could have a whiteboard calendar for the whole family to help you remember deadlines. But one example is if a scholarship's due on January 15th and school may or may not be in yet, and you know that you need 5 copies of your transcript that cover all the way through that fall semester and you're starting the spring semester, then you need to know when your office is going to be open and how long, what the lead time is that it takes to get that transcript. And you need to make sure and put little reminders for each one of those steps so that you don't forget to go get those items that are part of your application. And remember, that's determine what they want. So I set reminders beforehand. I would even remind myself that I've got to work on that scholarship application because it may have 3 essays I haven't written yet. And so I'm going to say that maybe I need 2 hours to write those 3 essays. Then you need to know the logistics of sending the application. That follow-up is key, and that's towards the bottom, the other stuff on the tips to applying for scholarships page. So did you keep copies of your application? If it is to be mailed, do you use U.S. Postal Service return receipt and signature required? Did you set a reminder in your deadline management calendar for the follow-up phone call to make sure that it arrived and was received? And you want to make sure that then once you do the follow-up phone call, if they say no, then you can have a timestamp that says somebody signed for it or it was sent, and you have a receive receipt on your email, and immediately ask to send it saying somebody received it, but I need to be able to follow up with it. So that's the follow through. Because if you've invested that time, and remember, I fought for $50. $50 meant the world to me, and it all added up to where I was able to pay even for my cost of living, like room and board. But you need to do those kind of logistics of sending the application and make sure that all that follow-up is done. And you build that into your process and you make that a habit. Then at the very end, the only time I would say there's an exception about not following instructions exactly, for me, when I graduated with my Bachelor's of Science in Mechanical Engineering in 1997 from Oklahoma State, I found out a year or two later that National Science Foundation published I was one of 75 female American Indian students that had even graduated with an engineering degree anywhere in the United States that year, the whole of 1997. So I couldn't figure out why people would throw money at me for scholarships, and I actively networked and applied. Well, now I know why. So if they were wanting a mechanical engineer that was a female and a Native American, now I happen to have a high GPA, but not everybody did. So if they said they needed a 3.5 GPA, and I think I graduated with a 3.48, then I would call them up and I would ask them if I could still apply for it, or just go ahead and apply for it. Because the likelihood that they're going to find the exact match is slim to none, given those kind of numbers. And they need to fund that. They don't want to sit on their scholarship dollars. They want to be able to spend those scholarship dollars. So I'm a big believer in following instructions and actually listening to people and doing what they ask. But there is one time when going to get the money would actually work for you and not follow the exact instructions, is when you're pretty much almost a fit and they really want to fund your narrow category that there's not many of you being produced. So now, just in general, why people fail with scholarships. So what's interesting is I find out after I ask people who complain that they never received money, they couldn't go to school because they couldn't afford it, or they say that they are inundated with school loans, and especially if they're a Native American who went into any kind of STEM degree. Come to find out they never even bothered to apply for a scholarship, or they apply for one scholarship, get denied, and that's the end of their search. Well, that's pretty sad. And that means if you never apply, you never get the money. So one thing that happened to me was my senior year in college, there was a company called Amoco, which has since been taken over by BP Oil. And I had a mentor that I worked with at that company. And he had a scholarship, and National ACES had not found a fit because the scholarship was for mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, civil engineering, maybe one more engineering, Native American students with even a 2.5 or 3.0 GPA. It wasn't even that high of a GPA. And they had no applicants for it. ACES hadn't sent them anything, and he's having to answer to his bosses over this money. So he had come to our regional ACES conference. Remember, being involved, being engaged, being networking, those are part of this story. So he hands me this one-page application and a pen and asks me to fill it out And we're talking big letters. This was not even a detailed one page. My brother, who's a civil engineer, was standing there. Two of my friends who were Native American and civil engineers were standing there, and all three of them needed money. Even one of my friends didn't have a bottom in the bottom of her car, and she would drive back and forth between Stillwater and Tulsa, and you could see the highway. I mean, like, these folks need the money. I was fully funded. So I told Bob, I said, I'm going to apply for this to help you because you've helped us, but I really need these three to apply and get the money because I don't need it. I'm fully funded. I guess they never even bothered to stop and do the 30-second application, because that's about all it took for me to fill this out. And so I get to the National ACES conference a month or two later to find out that I'm a scholarship recipient for Amico $5,000 later. And I had to pay my brother's bursar account because he was in debt that semester. And I'll never forget that, because that was a big lesson. If you don't apply, you've already failed and you're not getting the money. The other thing is they just don't get organized. They're flustered. They think there's nothing out there. And that is so not true. There's millions of dollars that goes unfunded. And we're talking with a little bit of organization, a little bit of planning, you can successfully apply for this money. Here I've got, even in 1997, I've got Bob begging me to fill out an application. And the reality is our numbers have changed very little. We're still a small community. Native Americans are less than 1% in STEM, PhDs. They want to fund us. So if you have a career of importance to the United States that isn't underwater basket weaving, so to speak, kind of degrees, and it's serious and it's needed for our infrastructure and homeland security, then you will get funded, but you need to be organized and actually apply. And we're providing that framework. The other thing that's frustrating is they would rather complain than do something about their situation. Sometimes I've listened to people, and in the time that they took, I estimated that a lot of times, I worked all through high school and college in addition, because we didn't have a lot of money, and that's what you did. And my parents created work ethic, which I'm very proud of, and I thank them for every day. So then my mom would tell me, I know it's your senior year of high school, you're supposed to be wanting to have fun, you're wanting to hang out with your other seniors, but if you will just take 2 to 4 hours on a Saturday and you apply for like 20 scholarships, and let's say it's 4, and you get $500, you just made over $100 an hour. Well, I was working for minimum wage, which was it was half of minimum wage. It was $3.25 an hour at Mazzio's Pizza in Seminole, Oklahoma. And it was half of that because I waited tables. So it was only like $1.60 something, $1.70. So I knew the value of what she was saying, and I made an investment in myself and would sit down even when I wanted to do other things and go and apply for scholarships even when it was painful or I had other stuff I wanted to do. So in the time you take complaining about not getting scholarship money, you could have already done your search and made several applications and probably brought home money. The other thing is there's just this overwhelming, or underwhelming for me, I guess, feeling that people are unwilling to invest in themselves. This is about you. This is about setting you up for a lifetime of success. You want the degree, you don't want student loans, and you need somebody else to pay for it. Well, you do that by applying for merit scholarships. The idea that you have to be poor to get scholarships is a misnomer. If you're being a student and you're being successful in doing your job and you want a degree in STEM or something else that's of need, they will fund you as long as you're applying. The other thing is, do not wait until the last minute. This is not what future employers want to see or anyone. And the Scholarship Review Committee will know that you did this at last minute, more than likely, and you will lose money. Plus, you may just miss deadlines, and those deadlines are serious. The other thing is, students don't do their own work. It is not the job of parents to fill out their scholarship applications, because that means they're more than likely not going to do their own they're not going to do their own homework at school, or they're not going to be able to succeed at their job. So really, scholarships are about getting organized and actually applying. And that's exciting to me because you can definitely bring home the money and it's there. You just have to look for it and apply. So, okay, we've come to the end of the presentation. For my part, I think we're going to hear from Dr. Julia Coates, who's former at-large tribal councilwoman, and she is the founder and creator of Cherokee Pins. So I'm excited. I think she's going to participate with us today. Again, really quick, if you want to follow me, there's all my social media outlets. I will tell you, go to my formal Facebook page, not my personal page, but my business page for Cara Cowan Watts on Facebook. And if you want to be added to either the Oklahoma Professional Chapter of ACE's listserv for ongoing scholarship opportunities or Cherokee Nation news and events, then you'll need to email me a professional email that actually says what you need and I don't have to guess, to caracowanwatts@gmail.com. Now we'll be taking questions. Hopefully you've already been thinking of some and we've got Dr. Julia Coates first, and then if you have questions, please write them up. And our moderator, Kimberlie Gilliland, will be helping me get those questions and then answering them. So I think we're going to hear from Dr. Coates now. Hello, CO, Julia.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Okay. And I heard that,
Oh, I'm going to act like I know what I'm doing, Julia.
okay. I heard that. Say yes. I really want to thank you, Cara, for doing this workshop. I made a little comment there. I think that one of the things that I was thinking about as you were speaking is that I never had any kind of academic counseling. I didn't know that such a thing existed, and it's one of the reasons that I never went out and applied for anything, because I just didn't know about anything. So there is that also. So I think what you're doing is incredibly valuable. I have heard from many of the at-large groups to whom this presentation was made in the past that it was perhaps the most valuable presentation that was ever sent to them back in the day when the Cherokee Nation was actually sending such presentations to the at-large groups. So we're really pleased at the PINS project to be picking this up and continuing with it and allowing you and Kimberlie later on to be doing these kinds of things that give a lot of support to students, either high school students going to college or college students that may already be in, because there's always a need for more money, no matter what place you may be at. So that's really what I have to say, I guess, and I want to thank everybody who did register and is participating in this, and to remind you that the PINS project will have a series of workshops coming up in the months ahead, and stay tuned for all that's still to come. Thank you.
Well, Julia. Okay, do we have questions from those attending today? I think I have one. Let's see. Okay, so there's a question about risk on giving out all the data on applications. So I'm not sure at this point who would need like social security numbers. I think most people aren't asking. And by the way, one thing I failed to cover, but I want to make very clear is no one should be paying for a scholarship application or a scholarship search engine. Unless they're actually doing the scholarship applications for you, which I would, just my personal preferences, I would not have somebody do my work for me. However, do not pay. There are some that will request your credit card information, other stuff. That is a showstopper for me. There are scam artists out there. So do not, before we get back to the data question, and this is around the data question, do not give out your like a credit card information, because that tells me that it's probably a scam deal. So no application should ask for, again, your credit card data. They shouldn't necessarily ask for your social security number either. So if there's an online application that you're questioning because they are asking for such sensitive personal information, then I would stop and call those folks. Now, I will tell you, back to the determine what they want phase, where you're going through the application and you're writing up your list of things. That's a great time to have a different color Post-it note with questions and stop then and ask questions of the person who's sending out the scholarship form. So what's interesting about this is to do it immediately. Don't do it close to the deadline. And the reason why is I did this scholarship workshop for the Osage Nation a couple of times and volunteered and went over to Pawhuska. And there was a Cherokee that was part of their education department and that invited me over. And she told a story that I think is more true and more common than most people understand. Their Osage Nation tribal scholarship deadline was, let's say it was the 15th of February or whatever day. They literally shut down the entire tribe with folks calling in for questions on the day the application was due. And they couldn't even answer Indian Child Welfare and other phone calls coming in because everybody had to be redeployed to the phones. And to me, that's a missed opportunity, not just for the tribe and those giving out scholarships, but it's a missed opportunity for the student because that means they more than likely were not funded. So again, back to the data, I don't recall scholarship applications asking for that much information. It should be hard copy, I would hope, if there's something going to someone. But if you have concerns about sensitive data, given the recent headlines and the risk of sending things, I would definitely call and ask questions, but I would do it sooner rather than later. Are there any other questions at this time? So I know that this is going to be available online. We're also, so we're archiving the video. We will also be following up and I'll be working to support Kimberlie Gilliland as she does more breakout sessions on specific topics where she'll delve deeper into things like social media, best practices, and things that do affect your ability to get the money. And at the end of the day, that's what this is about. Okay, I think we have 2 more questions I just found out about, or at least one. Do you have to fill out the FAFSA forms for these applications?
No.
Okay, and you do, well, it used to be that you would have to have the FAFSA for the Gates Scholarship in its old form, but I think that's changed too. So I know that Kimberlie, who's an expert, Kimberlie Gilliland, who's an expert in the FAFSA, and we've been doing this scholarship presentation together for several years now. So she's going to break out and do on January 20th, 2018. I think you can see that on your screen at 1 p.m. Central Mountain Time. The next webinar will be specifically on the FAFSA. One of the things I'd like to caveat is this is where the family is relied on and has to work with the student, because that means that the parents or grandparents or the guardians have to have their tax data in and ready as soon as possible. Because if there are early deadlines, and the old Gates Scholarship used to be this way, you had to have all that organized and ready for your student. It wasn't something your student could do. They were relying on you to get that done, and it was contingent upon that scholarship. Okay, so there was a question about if a parent refuses to participate in the FAFSA. I understand there are workarounds to do this. I'd like to personally find those parents that fail their students and help you talk to them. But I think that's something that we'll cover in the FAFSA seminar that you need to sign up for on January 20th. And specifically, our expert, Kimberlie Gilliland, will be addressing that. And she'll make sure that's in there because now she's heard the question. But there should be a workaround, and that comes with a lot more detail than we have time for at the moment. Are there any other questions? So summer internships, there's a question about summer internships. If you're pursuing science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, most of the summer internships are paid and they're really lucrative. If nothing else, your student will cover all their expenses. Even if they don't make money for the summer, they're going to get to go have an invaluable experience that adds to their resume, helps them determine what industry they want to be in, and it'll at least cover their room and board. If they're having to get one of my summer internships was with Amoco later in Denver, Colorado. Well, that's a much different cost of living than Seminole, Oklahoma. And that was a reality check. So I don't know that I came home with money, but it was a definitely adult learning experience for me about budgeting and making better choices up front on my personal finance decisions. So one thing about being STEM and being a nerd, which I'm very proud of, is you often get paid. So unlike pro football players, which are, some unimaginable number that actually get paid to do something, if you have a degree in STEM, you're going to be making typically anywhere from $45,000 to $200,000 easily in your career lifetime each year. And that gets exciting to me because that means you, the parents and grandparents, will be well taken care of as you age. And that's what this is about. It's about making sure people have an income for a lifetime, and that it improves our lives of our families. Okay, I think we have time for maybe one or two more questions. There's a question about, are there internships available overseas? I think there are. That's probably going to be a lot narrower opportunities and that there's fewer of them. But I know some of the things I've seen cross our Oklahoma Professional Chapter of ACE's email listserv is you'll see like Department of State or other folks where there are opportunities abroad where you can do stuff. And then of course, many universities partner outside the United States with other universities. So you would probably have to get scholarships and just study abroad, but there are specific overseas assignments. They're just a lot fewer. You'll have to be very focused and go research those and to get those opportunities, I'm sure. Thank you for all the questions. I don't know that we have any other questions. Are we okay? We're going to wrap it up. Again, thank you, Dr. Julia Coates, Kimberlie Gilliland, at-large tribal councilwoman Mary Baker Shaw, Cherokee Penns, and Star University. I was glad to volunteer my time today for such an important project, and I hope that all of you get the money and bring it home. What do?